It's Deep Focus from July 21st, 2025. Jean-Paul Bourelly is my guest on the topic. Here we're talking about Arthur Blythe. Later we're going to get into some Sonny Sharrock and Pharoah Sanders teaming up together. That is the whole thing. This one's it's a banger. All right, this is part 2 of 3 parts. If you didn't hear part 1, go back and check that out first. But otherwise, let's light them up. All right. I don't think you're supposed to use the word perfect talking about music, but man, that was just perfect. That was live recording, obviously, Arthur Blythe and Quintet, a live one from the WKCR archives, but our great thanks to whoever it was that created that recording. I'm going to guess it was the VDR folks.
Yeah, Westdeutsche Rundfunk.
Yeah. Them who are based in Cologne where this recording was made. Yeah. And our Arthur Blythe was brought to our attention as part of this Deep Focus broadcast by Jean-Paul Bourelly. And thanks for coming over, man.
Yeah, that was very lyrical, beyond lyrical. It's I don't know, when people put labels on music, it's just some really good stuff. I don't know.
Some really good stuff.
Beautiful.
The sound, the sonic quality of Arthur Blythe's alto saxophone and Abdul Wadud's cello. It
was a marriage. Yeah, it was just incredibly. And to even maybe your audience can appreciate it, but sometimes you are. Out there in the world trying to make a living doing the thing. And to me, to imagine yourself doing something kind of unorthodox always takes a lot of courage. But I can imagine if I stumble upon somebody that actually outfitted what I was doing so perfectly, you would know, like, okay, maybe this is not the normal, but it's going to work. It's going to work. So it worked beautifully, yeah.
Yeah, and then Arthur went into that just really profound bluesy solo, and he brought a whole other vocabulary to that, and then went back into that sweetness of that composition, Lower Nile. That was
yeah, and I think it draws back to if I'm correct, it was Horace Tapscott days. I think Horace used the tuba. And Arthur came through that institution that he had created out there in L.A. And
yeah,
so just we're all connected to something.
Yes,
wanted to put that in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are reaping the rewards tonight on Deep Focus. The radio station is WKCR FM New York, WKCR HD, WKCR.org, anywhere in the world. And 89.9 FM here in New York City. Or maybe you're listening to the Deep Focus podcast, which is free, ad-free. Nobody's ever going to ask you for your email address or anything like that. You sign up, and as soon as a new episode comes out, which is usually every Sunday morning, you get a little notification when you open whatever your favorite podcasting app is, Apple Podcasts or Google, or they're on YouTube, hopefully wherever you look. And we would love to hear from you. And you can also follow us along on Deep_Focus_podcast, Deep Focus Podcast on Instagram. And we put up photos of these artists. You might get into a conversation with somebody who loves the music you love. It's all free. And there's over 400 episodes posted. So dig deep, my friend. And we are in this one right now. We're an hour into it. We got a little ways to go, and a little ton of great music for you. We're listening to this music from Arthur Blythe with the Quintet from 1982, and we got a little secret mystery heading your way a little later in the program. And Jean-Paul, anything else we want to call folks' attention to as we move on through this beautiful set from Arthur Blythe?
I just want to. I guess I could kind of put it in context of other kind of what I would call spirit players that were around at the time.
Yeah. That was kind of a theme. I mean, you and I had a far-ranging conversation about who we might talk about for this. And you had a lot of ideas.
That's right. When I came to town, people who had also very identifiable sounds, but, kind of like, I would say, from a spirit point, it wasn't, I would say, highly over-intellectual kind of thing, which you also found at the time. But people like Frank Lowe and Reverend Frank Wright. Some folks like that also are people worth listening to if you don't know those names.
Billy Bang comes to mind.
Absolutely. Billy Bang, who was a violinist. So this was kind of like just kind of the whole ecosystem. I think Arthur definitely stands apart in terms of the kind of lyrical power that he had, almost like an opera singer,
Yeah. And when he first came to New York, he would work with a trio, just very small groups, and that I think he kind of built this up from that, this band sound.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know him then, but, when we were...
But you worked with him.
I did. I had been actually invited him in one of my projects to go over to Europe, and it was kind of close to the end of his being active as a musician, because he had illness and whatever. But we knew each other, so it was like something that should have maybe happened at some point, but it didn't. Another person that I would name within that spirit, who had penetrating sound, right, and is not always called out for it, is Henry Threadgill.
Yeah.
I love Henry's alto sound, because there was a whole, that was a sound that kind of came out, he may say I'm not correct, but it seemed to me growing up in Chicago, it came out of like the Gene Ammons thing, and then they were just doing other notes,
Yeah,
they didn't stick to those, chord scale notes. They were like, we're going somewhere else with it, but it still had that.
Well, he came and did a deep focus on Von Freeman, and
very close to Gene and Von.
Yeah, and Gilmore.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
And we've been talking about doing another one, which we not scheduled yet, but we're going to get to it. And I'll sidebar real quick on this. Have you read his autobiography?
I haven't, but many people said it's wonderful. So
it is fantastic, and I think you in particular will find revelation in there.
There's no doubt. I'm sure. No, Henry's special guy.
Oh yes. Well, we are deep in it with Arthur Blythe and Quintet. There's a great night, a fine recording, and a magnificent band that toured and recorded for a bunch of years. We got to see them. I think New York was home base for them, and they would play fairly regularly. I got to see them a bunch of times. And we'll push on into the set. So it's November 1982 in Cologne, Germany. And once again, it's Arthur Blythe, alto saxophone, Kelvin Bell, guitar, Abdul Wadud on the cello, Bob Stewart playing the tuba, Bobby Battle on the drums. It's Deep Focus. Jean-Paul Bourelly's here. I'm your host, Mitch Goldman. WKCR music from Arthur Blythe.
What I'm going to do for our last number, I'm going to do a solo composition, something that I wrote for one of my children. His name is Rashid, and I call this My Son Ra. Good night.
What do you think, Jean-Paul? You think we can get him to come back out for one more? I don't know. That might be it. That was the unmistakable, inimitable sound of alto saxophonist Arthur Blythe. And we were talking off mic, my guest, Jean-Paul Bourelly, and we are, the show's called Deep Focus. I'm your host, Mitch Goldman, and we invite a guest, Jean-Paul chose Arthur Blythe and his quintet in 1982 as a point of focus, and we were talking about this is a band. They have a sound.
Yeah.
The band, everybody's got their own sound, but the band has a sound.
Absolutely. It comes through, basically on everything, and I think it was one of those moments and one of those times when people were trying to kind of re-understand, whatever they want to call jazz or whatever. Don't really particularly like using the word, but let's say improvisational music, and he was re-instrumental. He was kind of understanding the tuba, bringing that back in, and like as I said at the beginning, it was still accessible, which over time I've found the value in that, like think about it enough, as constructed in a way where you don't lose everyone, Like the thing I've understood in the American context is that, like, or let's say in the global context, you either are developing the music, people will appreciate it for process, and then other people can only appreciate it when it's a product. Like, and the challenge to musicians who are working on things is to, of course, be real with the process, but to deliver it in a way where it sounds enough of a product without the shrink wrap, let's just say, that you don't lose, that you gain, people. And me myself in my music, I just used rhythm as that thing. I said, okay, the rhythm is going to be the thing. And I don't mean rhythm in terms of melodic rhythms, but real, like, chunky, rhythms. That's going to be something that I use no matter what I do harmonically or expansively on a sonic level. Hopefully that the rhythmic, impulse that's in the music will keep people in the house, and I think he's an artist that kind of displays that ability to do process, to keep developing, the way he developed, but also had a very, attractive sound.
And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, that we had this far-ranging conversation about what we might focus on, and you had too many great ideas. But it was interesting. They all did seem to hinge around, maybe it was something about the conversation we were having, or maybe something you've been playing with in your own head about this period of time when you were in New York, 80s, early 80s, and I'll tell you something. I always put stuff up on the socials. I posted some stuff yesterday. The minute I hit send, my phone rang, and I could try to make you guess who it was, but I'll tell you, and maybe you tell me what he said to me, because you probably will know. It was William Hooker.
Oh, wow.
Who's been on this show a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And he was talking about first meeting you around that time, even before any of the stuff we're talking about.
Yes.
And Studio Wiss.
That's right. Studio Wiss was the place that I hung out and basically met, Warren Smith, who was who kind of took me under his wing. Warren Smith was a percussionist, is a percussionist, a wonderful, wonderful guy, but a big-hearted person. And he kind of took me under his wing, like, if you have a hard time getting back uptown, just, sleep up in a loft bed. It'd be cool. So I would wake up sometime and it'd be like, who's banging at the door? It'd be like Max Roach. So, damn, I'm making this. So it was that kind of place, where you met a lot of people came through because he had such an extensive array of musicians that he was working with or had worked with. Yeah,
and he was doing Boom at that time.
He was doing Boom, Roy Brooks, what we were talking about. There's just a lot of people. He even had people like the Mighty Sparrow coming through there, like that hit that band, So you'd meet a lot of people, and it was. The city had gone through a depression, So all these, I'm probably not saying anything that most of your audience doesn't know, but just to bring it back to the spirit of why these things sound the way they sound and did what they did. A lot of these industrial places just were like, gutted. It was done. Like, what are we going to, and real estate people were probably like, we need to do something. What are we going to make? How are we going to make this thing sexy again? Musicians.
All of a sudden they need you.
Yeah, until they don't. But anyway, that's another story. So you had all these this loft jazz. I mean, it was a period of time when I first came where I could work if I wanted to 5 nights out the week. Go to this cat's loft play. Go that kind of. So, and to me, it was like. In a way, as an 18-year-old, it's like the enchanted forest.
Yeah.
It was just like you go around the corner and there's something incredible happening, then go around the next corner and it's like something like scary, like
right.
Something coming out of the gutter, man. You're like, wow, But it was all these possibilities. It was just like for a young person, it was just all these creative possibilities. So, and the convergence of all these disciplines.
Right.
Because everything had kind of broken down, I guess. Well, I didn't mean to do that, but
that's okay.
Everything had kind of broken down, and that just meant that something new has to grow out of it, and so all these different people who maybe otherwise would not be interacting with each other were interacting with each other. Multimedia. I saw a lot of interesting. I wasn't really into visuals then. I got more into it later on, but I saw all this interesting stuff around visuals. People like Lydia Lunch. And,
oh, sure.
You had James White and the Blacks.
Right,
it was like all this kind of punk, funk, people coming together. And of course, I was trained as a blues and a jazz musician coming out of Chicago, working as a young person in that thing. And when I came here, like I said, it was really like the enchanted forest. Like, wow,
Yeah, you can't.
And it was this pride of like straight ahead. You got to play changes. You got to do And I was like, forget that. I mean, this is some other wildness. And I think as a guitar player, okay, we deal with harmony, we deal with melody, but sound has got a lot to do with being an electric guitar player. So anything that was expanding the sonic spectrum was just like interesting, Even now, I mean, now you have, with the computer stuff, you got stuff that's going all the way down to 80 hertz or lower, 40, 30 hertz, and going, so the sounds you can manipulate now is just kind of, it's wide. I wouldn't say it's endless because it's still a digital realm, but at the time, the music that was really challenging things sonically was this kind of music. I don't even think it's possible to call it a thing.
Mm-hmm. Right. Everybody that played it was doing a thing.
It was like, you'd be at like the Pyramid Lounge, you'd be playing and like, go up and play whatever, as long as it's funky. Like, I don't know what that was, but it was funky, And I love that idea of like not knowing what a thing is, but knowing it has meaning and intelligence.
Yes.
Like, I don't need you to know what it is, but you know what it is. In other words,
there's something there. Yeah,
I don't need you to have a name for it. If you got a name for it, I'm already moving too slow. Right. So I just heard a lot of music like that. James Blood, when I first heard James Blood, his the band he had with the freelancing band,
Yeah.
It just sounded like, Bo Diddley coming out of Saturn or something, like, like it was just, it came out of a root, but it was just going somewhere else. And without excuses. Like,
yes.
Committed to just creating another sound out of the root.
Yeah. Well, that could be the next road we explore, if you want it to be.
Yeah, well, it's...
Or we could go with what's behind door number 3.
I think whatever we got lined up,
we got. You tell me.
It's a lot of music going on.
We did our own little bit of sonic exploration, and
I was telling you, we have something lined up with Pharoah.
We do.
And Sonny Sharrock. And I was just telling you, when we talked about sound, right? I remember one time being on the road with Pharoah, and I'll just give you this little thing, because it really moved me. So we would go from one, place to another, and then on the bus, I see Pharoah kind of like messing with a nursery rhyme.
Right.
It wasn't more than that, like a 2-bar phrase. Maybe it was even 1-bar phrase. I don't know, 2-bar phrase. And then later on that night, we're playing that and creating it into some kind of long symphonic thing, with echoes going around. And this is the kind of things we could do. You could just do that in Europe, and if it was working, it just worked. People weren't like, well, what kind of music is it? Or you can't play in this club doing that. It was just happening, And I think you had Will on. He was in that band. That band was hot. And the thing about it is, the reason why those nursery rhymes came off is because Pharoah's sound.
Yeah.
Like, the sound was so compelling, you could absolutely make something that maybe on a theory level you could say was a nursery, but it wasn't because of the sound. It just puts it into something else.
There's a moment in this recording you're going to hear Pharoah playing without even blowing into the horn. It's just his fingers tapping on the pads. And shall we? Should we jump into this one? Jumping in. Okay. So this is a recording from 1992 in Frankfurt, Germany. The Bockenheimer Depot. I don't know that place. Do you know that place?
No, I don't.
The Deutsches Festival in Frankfurt. The band, so this is a little bit of a spin on an album that had come out recently, Ask the Ages, which is Pharoah Sanders, tenor saxophone, Sonny Sharrock, guitar, Charnette Moffat's the bassist on that album, Elvin Jones is the drummer, who's not available on this tour, but the fantastic Firon Aklaf is the drummer, and it's, I don't know if anything else need be said. You are listening to WKCR. The show is Deep Focus. I'm your host, Mitch Goldman, here in the studio with Jean-Paul Bourelly and another one of your selections. Anything you want to say about Sonny Sharrock?
Sonny was another one of those artists who was taking sound to another level. And I have to say, when I met Sonny, he had taken a break. It was after his I guess his glorious period, whatever, Herbie Mann, whatever he was doing after that, I don't know. But then he took this break, and then he came back, and then that's when I met him, and we were all young, ambitious people, and and he was like, he was like uncle, man. He was like big brother,
Yeah.
I didn't really get Sonny until I saw that documentary we were just talking about. Yeah,
the Summer of Soul.
Yes, Summer of Soul. That little, whatever it is, 5-6 seconds, him as a young man. Of course, I got Sonny as a guitar player, as an artist, composer, but like that noise thing he was doing, that clip made me understand. I said, oh, I got it. It was something about the accuracy of what he was doing then, the power of the way that sounded. It really made me understand that noise could, it was going someplace. It was putting another dimension in the music,
Yeah. Well, he used to say, I spent a lot of time with Sonny. He used to say he wasn't really a guitar player. He was really a saxophonist. And he heard Coltrane, and that was it. And I don't know if he really meant that literally, because it'd be hard to believe that he did, because I think of him as a guitar player, but he didn't do any of the cliches.
Well, it's a thing about that, because the thing about guitar, I totally relate to that, because I think of myself as something other than a guitar player. Like, you can play guitar and never take a breath.
Yeah.
And that's what kills a lot of guitar players. They can be great technicians, but they never take a breath. So with a saxophone, you got to take a breath. And then it becomes more conversational. Right away, you open up things. You open up the bass bleeding through. You open up the snare drum coming in. You open up all these other things that now you can play off of. And I totally get understanding yourself outside of the thing, because the guitar, in terms of pop music, is such an iconic instrument. You can easily fall into all those kind of, I would say, okay, if I'm gonna be elitist about it, mediocre tropes, right?
Sure.
But if you want to try to stretch and go somewhere else, you can't be. You got to kind of give some distance to that. So I don't know if he would have said it like that, but that's how I understand it.
He was hilarious. He had a filthy sewer mouth when he got going. He took great delight in pointing out the absurdities of situations, which he found everywhere he looked. And we had a great time together. I miss him to this day. And so glad I still have the music. And here's a great live recording I almost guarantee you've never heard. It's, once again, so it's in Frankfurt, Germany, 1992. Pharoah Sanders and Sonny Sharrock co-leading, and Charnette Moffat on the bass, Veronak Loff on the drums. And let's take a little ride to Pharoah Sanders' original hometown. Title of this one is Little Rock on WKCR. You are in. Oh, hold on, fellas. Hold on. I'm going to ask you to just put it in pause for. It's Deep Focus from Monday, July 21st, 2025. Jean-Paul Bourelly, my guest, and here we're listening to some fantastic music from two of his heroes, two of mine, Pharoah Sanders, tenor saxophone, Sonny Sharrock on guitar. And this show came about, Jean-Paul and I were talking about all this time that very obviously an intense, impactful period in Jean-Paul's life when he was in New York. But I guess in hindsight, it wasn't really that long relative to the scale of his life, but certainly more important than it was long in duration. And that's when he and I got to know each other. I hadn't seen him in a bunch of years. We ran into each other at a party of a friend of the show, Don Palmer, had down in Baltimore. And I was very happy to see him. I guess he didn't mind running into me. And we planned this show out. And lo and behold, here we are. We got to do it. So that was part 2 of 3 parts. There's another roughly an hour coming your way in part 3. And let me just take this opportunity to say, because you're still here with us after that journey of that episode, I'm going to ask you, you never hear an advertisement on the show. We don't ask for your email address. We don't do anything other than maybe recommend some music that we think you might like. But one thing that'll be a huge help if you enjoy the show to spread the word about that. I think we've had 46 people say they click on the like on Apple Podcasts, which is where most of our listeners are found. So you could be number 47. That would make a big difference. Or, clicking 5 stars, making a comment. We really appreciate. I always read them. And I really love hearing what you have to say. And all that stuff makes a big difference in whatever this magical algorithm is that helps people find music that they like. And I know that you guys dig the show because I get such thoughtful and kind emails from you guys. It's really means a great deal. I'll give you the email address in a second. I just want to also say the best way to help us out, just tell somebody you know who loves music about this show if you think they're going to like it. And we really want to have them along, and then that's going to help more people find it. We have listeners all over the world. I don't know how you guys find us, but people do find us, but not a lot of them. So when you tell somebody, it's like spreading the word to a whole bunch of people. So yeah, please do spread the love. And I'll tell you that email address is deepfocusnow@gmail.com. Deepfocusnow. And people ask really cool, smart questions and just make thoughtful comments. And I'm always really impressed by how personal they are. And also you can use that address, Deep Focus Now, if you would like to defray the costs of us carrying the show, which are significant. Yeah, you could put a little something in the pot. We won't mind. In fact, it would be hugely appreciated. Anything you want to put in there. I'm not going to send you a coffee mug or an umbrella, but it'll warm the bones, I tell you. And you can do it via PayPal. All you need is that email address, deepfocusnow@gmail.com. And if you want to go to PayPal and send something our way, anything would be so cool. Really just tell me that somebody's hearing my voice. All right. So that was part 2, Jean-Paul Bourelly. And I'll see you over at part 3. Thanks so much for coming along.